so your writing sucks. Or you've been writing for a really long time and you've plateaued and you don't know how to improve your craft. So whether you are a beginner or an advanced writer, I have a few ideas to improve your craft. These are ways I have improved my writing over the last 20 plus years. My first suggestion is to rewrite a scene in a book or a movie. I'm sure there's a movie or a book or a television series that you really love that just ended on the most unsatisfactory note. Or maybe there's a scene in a book that you thought fell flat, maybe the romance wasn't that good, or maybe just the two characters could have said something and taken the story in a totally different direction. So a simple way to practice writing is to rewrite a scene in that movie or book. You won't have to create the world, you won't have to create the characters, you don't have to create the genre. All you have to do is just rewrite the scene itself. This can be just a scene or the ending or the beginning. It's a good exercise in the what if category of story writing. Relatedly, you could also write fan fiction. Fan fiction is one of those things where you either love it or hate it, and you're free to hate whatever you want if you have the time and energy to do it, but it's a really great place for new writers to start because you don't have to do the world building. You can create new characters or you can use old ones. So it's really easy for you just to jump in and start. Sometimes people get so caught up in world building and character building that they don't actually write a story. So this takes care of that procrastination problem. I started my writing career with fan fiction. Cassandra Clare also did the same. And let's not forget that 50 Shades of Grey was a Twilight fan fiction that made bank. And if that's not enough to motivate you, just remember that a lot of your favorite TV shows are actually fan fiction. Sherlock Holmes is the one that comes to mind. Now, if you don't want to copy a story that already exists, but you want to write maybe like your favorite writer, I would recommend copying them. And I don't mean word for word, although I have heard somewhere that if you write your favorite author's story word for word by hand, it'll make you a better writer. I read that a very long time ago, but it sounds really tedious, so I just never did it. But I did mention this in my How to Improve Your Vocabulary as a Writer video, is to read an author that I really enjoy or want to imitate, and then I try to write any sort of piece or reflection using their style and their voice. So this means taking in consideration what kind of mood that they use, what word choices do they use, are they formal, are they casual, do they write very simply and directly to the point, or are they very flowery and poetic? This has personally improved my academic writing so much just in the last 2 years. So I highly recommend trying this out. Personal recommendation. Now, another thing I have to bring up because it's an improve your writing video and this you just can't get around. You should join a writing group. Now, it doesn't have to be a lifetime commitment. I will admit that I haven't had very good success with online writing groups. I actually don't recommend those at all. And there's a couple reasons. One is that you never get a real reaction from people online. What people will do is they will read your writing and give you feedback, but it's completely filtered feedback. It's not a real raw reaction. And secondly, a lot of the writing groups that I joined had a lot of misinformation. That doesn't mean that your in-person writing group won't have misinformation, but the just sheer amount of bad information and no research done in these online writing groups is kind of insane. Also, just online writing groups are so congested and there's so many people. If you start a Zoom group, maybe that would work out better. I don't know. I don't pay attention when I'm on Zoom. Honestly, I just turn off my video and I go iron a shirt or make dinner. I don't pay attention at all. Real important thing with a writing group is seeing their reactions in real time. Unfiltered, not thought through, not quite at the point of sparing your feelings. It's actually a really great way to improve your writing. If you want to write something dramatic, you can see your audience really involved with the story. If you want to write something tragic, maybe your audience will cry. So I remember when I was in my early 20s, maybe even before my 20s, I joined a writing group that met once a month and I had to drive like an hour to get there. But it was a really good writing group. It was a good mix of people. And we talked about our projects and our different writing struggles, and we had a topic each month that we would go over. And then we would also spend like 30 minutes doing a rapid write, and then we would share those with each other. I think this was a really pivotal moment actually in my writing beginnings. I remember we did one rapid write, and I can't remember what the topic was supposed to be about. But I remember that I wrote a short piece that was kind of making a jab at people who go to church for the reward of going to church, but they don't actually go for Christ. I forget the topic exactly, but I believe we were supposed to make some sort of newspaper ad, because that's what I did. I made a church ad, and my newspaper ad was about if you came to church on Sunday and accepted Jesus as your Lord and Savior, you would get a free piece of cake. And I remember being so nervous when I read it because I didn't know if anyone would pick up on the sarcasm. And then when I finished reading it, there was a short pause, and then everyone's eyes lit up and they started laughing, which was exactly the response that I was going for. I wanted to make it comedic. So reading it in front of an audience, I got to see whether or not my writing communicated clearly enough to get the reaction I wanted. And it did, and I've been an arrogant prick ever since. But on the other hand, if my words hadn't gotten me the response I wanted, I could go back and rework it to get the response based on how they reacted initially. So either way, it would have worked out for me. Because one of your main objectives as a writer is to evoke different emotions in your audience. So reading it out loud in front of a safe writing group is probably the best way to see that your writing is hitting the mark. Another thing you can do is, of course, write in different genres. And the reason you want to practice writing in different genres is because different genres have different levels of tension, they have different levels of suspense, they have a different set of tropes, different types of characters, they even have different moods and different types of settings. And I would recommend going small on this one. I don't really recommend writing full-length novels in different genres unless you want to, because I love doing that. I write romance novels, but I don't write the same genre each time. There's so many fun romance genres, I want to try all of them. But what I would recommend doing is maybe taking a scene that you've done before, or taking a short story and then trying to write it in a different genre. And if you don't know how to write in a different genre or a different style, I would recommend picking up some writing craft books. This seems like square one, but maybe nobody's told you which books to pick up. There are two series I usually recommend to new writers. One is Rain Hall's writing craft books. There's like 38 of them. I recommend them. They're very detailed, they're very easy to read. And I also recommend the series Write Great Fiction by Writer's Digest. I actually started with the Elements of Fiction series from Writer's Digest 20 plus years ago, back when they would ship you writing craft books every month. I really miss that, actually. And I also recommend reading books related to grammar and style. Your job as a writer is to understand your language and its mechanics and how you can manipulate and how to manipulate it to communicate clearly to the reader. And this includes studying sentence structure, vocabulary, syntax, style, etc. I've been making some blog posts on these topics. One of them is how to write a sentence multiple ways. So subscribe to my YouTube channel for updates on that, or you can subscribe to my blog at deidredewitt.com. If you're an advanced writer, off the bat, I would recommend Building Great Sentences by Brooks Landon. I would also recommend Steering the Craft by Ursula Le Guin. And if you really just want inspiration as a writer, I highly recommend The Case for Literature by Gao Jingjian. You can actually read his essay, The Case for Literature, online because he is a Nobel Prize winner of literature. I forget what they're called. Now, the next thing I recommend is to get beta readers. In the same vein as writing groups, beta readers will give you feedback to help you make your writing a lot better. Usually they'll help you out the most with plot and characters. Don't depend on them so much for grammar and vocabulary and punctuation. Feedback is the best and most important way to get better as a writer. I know we don't want critiques, I know we don't want to hear bad things about our writing, but there's a few things to remember. First, if you want to be a writer, you need thick skin. In fact, if you want to be any kind of artist at all, or even a functioning person in society anymore, you need to have really thick skin. You are going to get 1-star reviews. You are going to get people that comment on your stuff and say it's trash. I even remember when I was in the 4th grade, I wrote a short story and my classmate next to me read it and finished it, threw it to the side and said I could write better. And we were like 10? Boy never wrote nothing, but still insulted my work. It was pretty trash, but I was 10. So you need to have that thick skin that when people start to pummel your writing, you can still function. Secondly, you are too close to your story, so you do not see the plot holes. You don't see the character inconsistencies. Not because you're blindly in love with your story, although you might be, although you're probably not by the end of it, to be honest. It's because it's already in your head fully developed, and sometimes you just forget to add the details on paper for everyone else to see. So a beta reader is going to help you with that. And third, it saves you a lot of money on developmental editors. I mean, if you're writing your first book, or if you're writing in a new genre, I always recommend hiring a professional developmental editor, because you don't have enough experience to know what's working and what's not. Which brings me into my next tip: please hire an editor. This not only improves your book, but it improves your writing as well, because an editor will tell you what you need to work on. Beta readers will help you with the emotional feedback. Emotional feedback is very important. Your line editor will help you with the professional feedback. Also very important. You need both parts of this business. And the best way actually to do this, I recommend writing short stories first and then sending those to a professional editor, because they will tell you which elements you need to work on as a writer. When I wrote my first short story for publication, The Exchange, I actually sent it to 3 different editors because I was really nervous. So I sent it to 3 different editors, and actually all 3 of them told me to work on my point of view. I was switching point of views too much, and it was actually more jarring for the reader. It made it hard to read. So I fixed it, and I think it turned out way better. So please, 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 to make your writing better, get feedback. It is the best way. Some writing advice that really helped me was to remember that you and your writing are not the same thing. So when people insult your writing, they're not actually insulting you. You are always connected to your writing. It is a creation of you. It is a piece of you, but it does not define you. If someone hates your work, that doesn't mean they hate you. And vice versa, if someone hates you, that doesn't mean they hate your work, which is why it's very important to know what your goal as a writer is and to hold on to that motivation. I'll actually be talking about that in a new video soon. So go ahead and keep getting professional feedback, so when you get those 1-star reviews, they don't ruin your life. And speaking of living, to improve your writing, I recommend traveling. Now, you don't have to go abroad or go to some Instagrammable place, but I do recommend going to new places. And this is mainly because when you go to a new place, your senses are kind of more aware. So you're very aware of the sounds, you're very aware of the smells, you're very aware of how things look different than your neighborhood. This is helpful for writing because as you're more aware of it, you can process the information and you can do better world building, you can do better culture building. So if you just want to travel to a small mountain town or a forest or a large beach city and just take a notebook and jot down the different sights and smells and observations and cultures and people that you see, that will help your writing a lot. And you can also just hop on Pinterest and make some different boards for different types of settings, cities or countries or whatever you're working on. I'm actually at the point in my life where I don't really like traveling anymore. I'm just tired. So I use Pinterest boards a lot. But I've also already traveled a lot for the past however old I am. So I have things in my memory that I can pull out. Another tip for improving your writing is to ingest lots of media. And I don't really mean streaming your favorite TV shows or movies, and I definitely don't mean social media. But in order to make your storytelling great, you have to study storytelling. And storytelling is in a lot of different mediums. You should go watch plays, you should see movies at indie theaters, watch TV shows in a different language, play video games, go to carnivals or Ren fairs and go listen to verbal storytellers. Anything and everything in any format, just storytelling. Studying and understanding and admiring the art of storytelling is your biggest task. Even people are great stories. So this would be my next tip, is to study people. Storytelling is connected to humanity itself. Even if you are making stories about something non-human, there's always a human element to it. There's always a bit of soul. So you have to study those things. This can mean studying psychology or philosophy or theology, anthropology, history, biographies, criminology, all of the above. This will help you in your storytelling by learning how people think, why people react to situations a certain way, how they act in groups? Why do those groups oppose each other? All of this is connected to storytelling. So while university classes are really costly, and I don't recommend taking those, even as a teacher, I don't recommend taking those unless you have a good reason to, I actually really recommend looking into university courses and what textbooks they use, and then buy those really expensive textbooks, buy them used if you want, and study through topics that way. I still have all of my textbooks. They're amazing. I love my textbooks. And I use the textbooks because I trust them more than the internet. Not to say that books can't be corrupted, but it goes through a lot more people. And the university has to curate which books they use. So I recommend it that way. Whatever you use, study something that helps you make better characters and better storytelling. And my last tip, tip number 12, I think. Tip number 12, last tip, very important tip. Rest. The best thing you can do for your writing or any creative work is to get enough rest. Your brain needs downtime to process everything you're taking in. Your subconscious actually works through ideas in a rested state. This is why you get a lot of ideas while you're falling asleep or when you're in the shower, is because you're not actively focusing on your piece and your subconscious takes over. So your ideas come together better when you're rested. Your quality of your work is a lot better when you're rested. You can create more if you are rested. So let your subconscious do its job, give it some space, go do something relaxing, and your writing will improve immensely. Those are my tips for improving your writing. I have used all of these in my writing career. Let me know if any of these tips are helpful, or if you have any additional tips you would like to add. Put those in the comments. I'm sure there's a ton of different ways to improve your writing. Those are just the ones I have used. If this was helpful, give it a like and subscribe for my next video on more writing tips. In the meantime, keep being beautiful beasts. I'll see you tigers later. Peace.